In this week's episode, we'll be answering a listener question of how to thrive in the current pandemic. Before we get to that, Kyra, how's it going this week?
It's going really well. Last night I did like these decompression boots or something, and they're these boots that go all the way up to your thighs, and then like they inflate with air and they compress your legs, and
Mhm.
it's crazy. I felt like a new woman afterwards, so I'm feeling amazing.
Well,
How are you feeling?
why'd you do it in the first place? Was there something
Um,
specific?
No, I mean, we were hanging out with our friend, and he's a licensed massage therapist. So he has like a workplace of practice. And we were hanging out there, and he's like, "Yo, you want to try the decompression boots?" And I'm like, "Yeah,
All right.
yeah."
They know they felt so good.
Oh, they feel amazing. I honestly highly recommend it.
Nice. Um, yeah, it's this week's going all right for me. It's a battle of mindset, which is good, because you can't have every week cannot be easy because then in theory it could if you train really hard, but I part of me, gets excited when there's some sort of like things are not turning out exactly how I wanted them to, because that's a prime opportunity for mental training. Uh, so that's kind of a vague and abstract way of saying what's going on with me. um,
I like it.
but yeah, so let's help people out and answer this question on how to thrive during the pandemic. I, for one, can say that, with your Instagram, tons of dancing that you film and that you post on there, and seems like you have a lot of cool adventures, traveling with friends and whatnot. You seem to be thriving in this pandemic. I don't know. You're
Thanks.
certainly not sitting at home saying like, "Oh no, shelter in place. I can't do anything. Well, when is it going to be over?" I don't hear those things coming from you. So what have you been finding? Um, I don't know. Do you stand out there in Florida? Is everybody else moping around, or is just maybe is Florida just like a better? They're not as hard hit by the COVID. I don't know.
I think Florida's just a bunch of I think Florida's just a bunch of rebels. So, like I'll go into the little smoke shop. He's never wearing a mask. I never wear a mask when I go in there. I went to a bar in Key West like 3 months ago. Nobody was wearing masks. We were all just chilling, drinking, having fun at this like kind of like city bar or whatever. No masks. So yeah, Florida's awesome. There's really not that much. I mean, Miami shuts down at 12 a.m. right now, which really sucks, but like I mean, we can still go to clubs and stuff.
I think, yeah, it may, it definitely varies based on the density of the population. I live in San Jose here, and it's pretty crowded. Um, it's one of the top 10 cities in the US. And so our numbers are not doing that well, actually. Our ICUs are at 97% capacity. They're almost full. And so we're still supposed to stay in. All bars are closed. Um, and
Wow.
yeah, my hometown, Chicago, the numbers were 77% full at the ICUs. 77 is a little bit better, because in California, they instituted a rule that anytime the ICU is above 85% full, then everybody has to stay home, and there's like this stay at home order. So,
Crazy.
yeah. So, I mean, it's going to be really dependent upon where people are geographically, but, and then it's also going to depend on other factors such as whether you're employed or not. But I think whether, even if you are unemployed, I think you can just build structure into your day, and that will keep you on track. What do you think?
I don't know. I think that there's like a lot of different ways to earn money during the pandemic. Um, you know, if you're sitting home moping around, because of the pandemic, etc., like there's so much that you can do. Like, what do you mean you haven't earned money because you're out of a job? Um, there's so many ways to earn money. Like you can do Uber Eats, you can do Postmates, you can go on Craigslist and find gigs for people who need like construction work in their home. You can start an online business because you happen to be a great cook, but you've never pursued it. Okay, we'll sell an online cookbook. There are so many different ways to earn money. I don't think that the pandemic should have stopped anyone from making money, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. And I like the ease with which you kind of come to that conclusion that, you can just, there's many different options. And I think perhaps a mindset, maybe certainly a mindset I've had to get over, is this mindset of a single and stable stream of income. That's kind of how I was raised to think, and that's how I was trained, so to speak, if we're talking about mental training, right? But as I've studied people like our guru, Grant Cardone, I mean, he has nowhere near one stream of income. He has several. And to reach those levels, you have to start doing it. So that's why I started teaching skateboarding class, and that's why I started doing like seminars and everything. And not just for money, but for the personal growth, for the you know what? I just realized I had a dream about Tai Lopez. That's so funny. Me and my entrepreneur studies. But maybe we should even talk about dreams. Maybe not in this episode. But the point is that, kind of like Ty said in one of the trainings that I was watching yesterday, is that during the pandemic, a lot of people did suffer financial misfortune. But at the same time, other industries boomed. If you owned a restaurant, it's going to be very, very difficult for you. But if you own a meal delivery service, your business actually grew in the pandemic. And so I think it really calls for maybe more flexible thinking, because you can't just go around thinking like, well, my one job is going to be here for me forever, and nobody better take that away. And oh, stupid pandemic, they took away my job. And like it's too reactive, and it's too victim mindset. Too much of a victim mindset, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I completely agree. Now, since the pandemic started, February, March, April, it didn't start not long after last year's growth conference. So,
right, yeah.
What did you do when it started getting like really bad? What were you doing to stay, I guess, sane? Because it was pretty fucking hard to stay sane when it all first went down.
That's a good question. When it first happened, what I remember is sort of like just a lot of uncertainty about how the virus spreads. So I remember going to the gas station, and I was like, I didn't even want to touch the pump at the gas station because I thought there could be coronavirus on it. And so then I would have to go get like a paper towel, and then grab the handle with my paper towel and fill my car with gas, and then
But what did you do mentally?
Mentally, I would say I started thriving more towards the second half. Here's the mindset. Yeah, here it is. So early in the pandemic, when I had to work from home exclusively, um, and I was in a new role, I did a lot of studying. Um, Specifically, I was studying some computer stuff that was relevant for my job. 3 months later, when I did get to go back to the office, those 3 months of studying paid dividends because I was finishing projects in like record time because I knew this new computer software, right? And it's and so the lesson there is, like, I started to ask myself this question of how can I operate during this pandemic in such a way that at the end of the pandemic, I'm like way more prepared for anything that comes up. I'm like, I can say like, man, I used that time to the best of my abilities. That coronavirus time launched me forward in life. Like there was no better time. I mean, if we have to stay indoors, like just stay at home and do like a year's worth of reading or something, like that's going to propel you so far. It's more of like how to see it as an opportunity rather than a setback.
Completely, completely agreed. It makes me really happy that you studied the work, and then like when you went back to work, you kind of, you kind of shot forward because you already knew what you were doing. Um, I feel like a lot of people during the pandemic gained a lot of weight and like didn't really get anywhere different in their life. And I've seen people like on the streets, like if I'm like out in Miami or like out somewhere, and I feel like I've had conversations where people are like, well, yeah, because of the pandemic, my body got kind of, like out of shape. And I'm thinking to myself, shit, I mean, when the pandemic started, I was fasting twice a week, for 2 days each time with just juice, So like, there were so many ways that you could have used the pandemic um, to your benefit. Like I also started Instacart because I needed money and I didn't have anywhere to go. The bars weren't open. I couldn't go anywhere. My friend's mom like wouldn't let her out or let friends over. So I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to waste this time. I'm going to do something. If there is nothing to do, I'm going to do something and I'm going to do it good. So I worked out every single day. Um I did Instacart every single day. I ate fruit every single day. I would fast twice a week. In my downtime, I would watch movies, but like I can honestly say that, wow, I have taken COVID by the balls and I have come out so much better because of it. And I personally think that COVID-19 was a blessing. I think that it was a huge, huge blessing for so many people to really just sit with themselves. Like when you have when you have nothing else to do but sit alone in your mind, that's like how yogis become yogis. They lock you in a room with your thoughts and you gotta sift through them and kind of find out how your brain works. And I don't think anybody has been this not busy in such a long time. So for you to be not busy at all and not do anything at all, I mean, it's pretty much a crime, honestly.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think there's so much that can be learned about yourself during times like this. And I think it reveals people's mindsets to some degree, um, because the people who during the pandemic say, oh, because of the pandemic, I can't do this, I can't do that, or I'm failing, or I'm not doing well, I'm gaining weight, I'm blah, 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 are the same people that when the pandemic is over will be saying, oh man, because now things are open, and I don't have that time to myself anymore. Now I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. There's so many distractions now that restaurants are open again, and everybody's socializing. It's too much, and that's why I've neglected my finances, and that's why I'm so unorganized, and and so what gets revealed is this mental skeleton they have of a excuse-centered worldview, and they just carry that around with them anywhere they go, regardless of whether it's quarantine time or non-quarantine time. Their mindset is still structured in that same way.
I completely agree, and I love that you made that point, because I feel like, yeah, like there will always be people who are blaming like outside circumstances for the reason why their life is the way it is. But if you actually give it a little bit of thought, you're always going to have an excuse. You are just like always going to have an excuse. And here, God has given the world what we've been silently praying for, and you toss it away. And then once it's all over, you come out and you're still blaming outside circumstances. It's like there's always going to be a problem from that lack, or kind of lack mindset. It's like, okay, well, before the pandemic, I wasn't doing as good as I could have been because I've been really tired, right? So then the pandemic happened, you got all that rest, and you're like, well, now I can't do anything, and there's nothing left to do but eat all day, so I guess I'll rest and I'll eat all day. And then when the pandemic is done, those same people who are complaining before the pandemic and during the pandemic are still complaining after the pandemic, and they're like, well, like you said, Robert, well, now all the restaurants are open, and I want to go out with my friends, I miss my friends, and my finances are so bad, maybe in 2021 it'll be better. And then like in 2021, maybe he doesn't like I don't know anything about the economy, but maybe he doesn't like the economy in 2021, so there's always going to be a reason or an excuse for you to not go after what you want. And they're easy too. Like the excuses are so easy. Like they just come to you. I am tired. Okay. I went to bed at 3:30 a.m. I didn't drink or anything. I just went to bed really late. And then I woke up an hour early for our podcast. And and I could have easily sent you a text and been like, hi, Robert, my phone's dead and I don't have my charger and I can't do the podcast today, but I would have just been making an excuse. Like it would have just been yet another excuse. And I would have been saying yes to, I guess, kind of like laying in bed and, oh, I'm tired, I went to bed late, knowing I had a podcast this morning, and I could I could say yes to that, and I could say no to following my dreams. I could say no to being there for somebody who trusts me to be there on the podcast. I would be saying no to the things that I actually want and yes to the things that I actually don't want. So there's always going to be an excuse if you don't just get the fuck up and do it now.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, your decision is much appreciated to, I think not just by me, but by the viewers and the listeners. But you're totally right. Go ahead.
So was there any point in time during the pandemic that there was a struggle? And if the answer is yes, what were you thinking at the time that kind of caused that struggle-ish mindset?
Sure. I would say, well, my first thought was every day is a struggle. and I don't say that from a victim mindset, but rather from sort of this understanding that every day there will be forces, psychological, maybe, social, maybe, environmental forces that push you back towards mediocrity and towards the social role that you've always had in life. There's always going to be forces there. And so it's a matter of overcoming those forces with more force and creating the day and creating yourself. And it's not, creating yourself is not a passive act. You know, watching TV is a passive act where you just kind of sit and take it in. But creating yourself, trying new things, new habits, etc., that's a proactive act. So the second point would be, were there times of struggle? I would even reframe that, and I would say, even if there were, I wouldn't use the word. I would think of it not as struggle, but I would think of it as opportunity, or I would think of it as an illusion of struggle, right? So whereas most people might buy into the illusion that they're struggling, I see past it and I see the truth that it's not that I'm struggling, it's that I'm growing. And so a plant that's growing and, you know, and is expanding and is outgrowing it's growing so large that the pot that it's in cannot contain it anymore, and the roots are trying to expand. That plant could say it's struggling, but that plant could also say it's growing. And then the third piece of my answer is, let me think to, in the traditional sense of the word struggle. Well, as you know, I lost someone very close to me during the pandemic. It wasn't related to the pandemic because it was not a death related to COVID. But it was, that no doubt was difficult, but how did I respond to it? I don't know. I just come back to this two-part approach to life, where the first part is I always ask, is it true? Whether I hear something from somebody else or someone tells me that such and such an event happened, I ask, is it true? And then if it is, the next question is, what action can I take on that item? And then I proceed that way. You can't really just sit around. If there's no action to take, human health and human psychological well-being is, a lot of it is taking action. So you have to constantly keep asking yourself, what action is there to take? What action is there to take? And your example of seeking other income streams, you know, doing Instacart, exercising every day, those things that you did to keep busy during the pandemic, that's an example. That's an example of asking that question, what's actionable right now? What can I do right now? And then doing it. So that's how I would get out of so-called struggle. What about you?
I really like that. It's definitely interesting to view it as you're growing during the pandemic, because there were definitely some struggle-ish times for me where like I was like, holy fuck, like this is so fucking annoying. If one more bitch comes up to me and tells me to put my fucking mask over my nose, I'm gonna burn the shop right down. So it was definitely really, really hard for me. And I'm trying to think of like what I was thinking at the time, you know, like, was I thinking that I'm growing, or I think I was just thinking that, you know, hard times don't last and that like it's going to be over soon and you're going to be able to breathe freely soon. You know, so just just fucking do it. And, you know, if you keep your cool during all of this and, you know, you don't let it get to you, and, you know, you continue to exercise and eat healthy, etc., you know, then you will get through this. And I think that that was just what I kept repeating to myself the whole time. It wasn't so much as I was growing, but I do think that there was a piece there inside of me that was like, you're gonna grow from all this. Like you're growing from all of this. And if you're growing from all of this and, you know, times get hard, like at least you're growing. At least you have the time to go inside your mind now and recalibrate your life, like you're growing, sort of thing. So I guess that's kind of what got me through my strugglish times when my mindset was kind of low about this whole pandemic thing.
Yeah, definitely. Let's give our final thoughts for today's episode. So everything you were just saying about like perspective and kind of knowing that the pandemic won't last forever, I think that's really key. Something that helped me in terms of mindset was to certainly zoom out and look at patterns. So 100 years ago, there was the Spanish flu, right? And of 1918. And that was really bad. And people had way less technology to deal with that. But they got through it, and the decade of the 20s was a very prosperous decade. It was so great that they called it the Roaring 20s. And I think that we're in store for another decade like that. The next 10 years, I think, are going to have a lot of partying and a lot of good times, and I'm excited for that. The second historical thing to notice is the occurrence of recessions every 10 or so years. Used to be more frequent until the Federal Reserve regulated the economy better, but even still, so 10 years ago was the housing bubble that burst, and we had a lot of people lost a lot of money, and we had a recession in 2008. Okay, 10 years before that, there was like a dot-com bubble burst with overvalued technology companies. That was a recession, right? 10 years before that. And it's this recurring thing where the economy contracts, right? And there's sort of like a recession, businesses go out of business. And then there's an expansion, and then it contracts, and then it expands, and then it contracts and expands. And that's just the way that the world works. That's the way that the human lungs work, even, right? Breathing in and out, breathing in and out. That's just the pattern of life. And so it's just a matter of time before we enter into the next phase of expansion. The question is, when we begin to enter that next phase of expansion, I want to be so well prepared. I want to have taken advantage of my time during coronavirus as much as possible, so that I'm like well set up to enjoy to the most of my abilities the expansion that's coming up.
Completely agreed. And I think that my final thought will be that, you know, you said that every 10 years this happens. I personally have a little bit of thought that it's planned. It's like they're just trying to plan something like every 10 years, because I'm pretty sure that COVID was made in a lab. But the law of polarity states that everything has an equal and exact opposite, you know, so good cannot exist without bad, and bad cannot exist without good. So, you know, another perspective of it is that, you know, if it's planned, these fucking stupid viruses that just so happen to happen every 10 years or every 100 years, whatever the fuck it is, you know, whether it's planned or whether it's by nature, it's still according with the natural laws of the universe. What would our world be if it was good all the time? We wouldn't appreciate it. We wouldn't really submerge ourselves into it, because it's something that we know all the time. And I don't know, you get used to it. I think you get used to it, and you stop appreciating. But when the economy drops and all this bad shit happens every 10 years or whatever, it makes you really appreciate when things are going really good for you. So I like that approach, and it just reaffirms everything that I already know about, natural law and everything.
Right on. All right. Well, for anyone who has ideas about future episodes or questions you'd like answered, send us a message on our Instagram or Facebook, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
See ya.